Hi, everyone. Thanks for signing up for 482 Forward's next lobby day. We are going to go through a short training just to make sure that we all know what to expect and how to lobby. So the first thing we're going to talk about is actually what is lobbying. That makes sense. And if you are somebody who feels like you know what lobbying is, you know how to do it, you understand the structure of the legislature, you can go ahead and skip towards the end where we will talk just about the message that we're going to focus on Tuesday. But for the rest of us, let's start with watching this short video about what lobbying is.
Look, man, if you want to change the news, you have to find the news. I'll go anywhere in search of a good story. Wherever the action is, I'm there.
On the surface, our political process seems simple.
Voters elect the representatives, and they represent the will of the voters, right?
Wrong. At the center of this process lies the lobbyist, hired by giant corporations to sway our politicians, these agents of corruption. Sorry, are the,
Who am I? I'd tell you, but I'm too busy reporting on something terrible, something that's probably ruining the country, because that's what journalists do, and I'm a journalist. This is Disrupt, the disruptiest journalism your face has ever seen. We disrupt stuff like lobbying. I knew I had to disrupt that just as soon as someone would tell me what the hell it is.
What do you do?
I'm a public interest lobbyist.
Whoa. I gotta disrupt you right there. First off, you're not a lobbyist. Lobbyists look like, I don't know, this guy. But if you insist...
Give me a concrete example of how lobbying works.
Okay, let's say that you run a business and there's a policy that you want passed in Washington. You hire a paid lobbyist here, maybe a former member of Congress. That person is going to tell you how much money to give in campaign contributions to influence what's going on up there on the Hill.
Whoa. Gotta disrupt you again. What you just described sounds like a rigged system.
That's the essence of the rigged system.
Got it, great. Sorry. The lobbyists in Washington, they own this town.
If you got the money, you can get your message delivered, and you're going to make sure it's delivered effectively.
It makes me both nauseous and excited. What about the steak dinners, the infamous steak dinners?
Got rid of those.
Do you have to order the fish? Can you not get a side? What does that mean?
A group of us got a rule passed in the House that says they can't take gifts from lobbyists. That means that you can't take somebody out for a steak dinner. But if you go to a reception and you can serve the food with a toothpick, then it's permissible under the rule.
You're lobbying me right now.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and yet I'd seen it with my own 2 ears. It was time to nail down one of these lowlifes and make them accountable. Someone who looked like, I don't know, this guy. Oh my god, it's that guy. Pay dirt.
What global conglomerate do you represent, and how do you ram that agenda down the American people's throats?
I lobby on disability issues before Congress. I helped pass the Americans with Disabilities Act, which has changed the face of America for people with disabilities.
To pass something like that, to get something like that through, I can only imagine the kind of stuff that you have to... So do you have a favorite back alley that you've handed over a big, large sum of money?
Gosh, I wish I did. We have to go on things like the truth and appeal to people's better instincts.
You're killing this investigation.
Sorry to hear that.
Lobbyists, good or bad?
Necessary.
Come on.
Lobbyists play a really important role in making sure that good information gets to the Hill.
Gotta disrupt. So even though lobbyists do spend money to influence legislation, some are working for worthy causes? And some don't even have much money?
It's not the story that I want, man.
It always bothers me when journalists come with a point of view that really isn't very well informed.
I wanted corruption, greed, the greasy palming of corporate dollars. Where was my story?
So how's your day so far?
Kind of sucks. Lobbying is super confusing.
Lobbying is just talking to your representatives. You want to find a cause that you're passionate about. Go to your politician and then just talk to them, get their support. You want to make sure also that you get both the Senate and the House side. Very important.
How do you know anything about lobbying?
Well, I'm a lobbyist.
This kid can't be a lobbyist. He's like a child in a suit.
Can't be a lobbyist. You're a child in a suit.
Why are you so interested in learning about lobbying anyway?
I was going to expose the system.
Whoa, who just disrupted me?
Sorry, that was me.
Look, kid, I do the disrupting around here.
I figured it was the only way to get through to you.
Well played, kid. I'm listening.
There's always going to be the people that are representing the corporations, and there's us. We represent what we want. That's essentially what lobbying is.
I don't even think I have a story.
You do have a story. Tell them the best way to make a difference would be to strike at the laws. because I'm talking to my representatives, I'm making a difference. I'm impacting the laws.
Fine, I get it. If you want to disrupt the system, you gotta actually disrupt the system and join the thousands of people lobbying for causes, bad and good, like this kid.
Okay, what if I told you you can make a ton of money lobbying for a big oil company?
I would turn that offer down.
What do I need a ton of money for? I'm just a child in a suit.
All right, so hopefully everybody now has a better sense of what lobbying is. And I think you heard him say that lobbying is basically just talking to your representatives. So even though, yes, there are corporations that spend lots of money every year to get their point of view across, there are also just regular folks like us who go and talk to our representatives about what we want to see. So that's what we're going to do on Tuesday. So who are we going to lobby? That video talked a lot about Congress, which is actually federal or national, and it's in DC. But we have something very similar here in Michigan called the Michigan Legislature. So the Michigan Legislature has two parts. On the left, you can see the Senate. There are 38 senators in the Michigan Senate, and on the right, you can see the House of Representatives. There are 110 representatives in our state legislature. Each of those, both the senators and the representatives, are elected from a geographic district or area in Michigan. So everybody who lives in Michigan, we all have a representative from our area and a senator from our area. The Senate districts are just a little bit bigger. And everybody who can vote in Michigan, we vote every 2 or 4 years on the representatives and senators. So that's who we are going to go talk to. And that's kind of how the legislature is structured. Now, what we want to do is learn a little bit more about the process that they actually use to get laws passed. And that's really important to understand because it's going to help us know exactly what we're asking these senators and representatives to do when we go on Tuesday. All right, so let's watch this quick video. It's a little bit of a throwback. Hopefully some of you, enjoy it. Oops, that didn't work.
As your body grows bigger,
your mind must flower.
It's great to learn,
'cause knowledge is power.
It's Schoolhouse Rocket, the chip off the block of your favorite Schoolhouse Rock. I'm just a Bill.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a Bill, yes, I'm only a Bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a Bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
All right, so maybe you've seen that before. And like I said, that was similar to the first video. That was about Congress. That was about our national process for creating bills or actually creating laws. But the process is very similar here in Michigan. The legislature runs very similar to the way Congress does in DC. And so, a bill tries to become a law, essentially, has to go through committee and then go and get voted on by the entire House and then go over the Senate and get voted on again, or vice versa, and then hopefully becomes a law. And then instead of the president signing, in our case, it would be the governor, who now is Governor Gretchen Whitmer. So that's the process for our legislators to try to get laws passed. And so when we go on Tuesday, what are we going to be lobbying them for? So there is not currently a bill, a specific bill that we are going to go and talk to them about and say, hey, we want you to vote yes on this bill. Instead, we're going to go and we're going to talk to them about a concept, about school funding, and we're going to encourage them either to introduce a bill if there's somebody who sits on the right committee, or just to vote yes for it when it comes up. Or potentially to talk to their party and to the other legislators who they have relationships with to get them to introduce a bill and to support it. So we are going to talk in particular about full and fair funding for Michigan schools. And what are we going to ask them for? I'm just going to read it straight out. So we are going to ask them to increase public school funding by at least $3 billion a year. And we will send you in the email that you got with this link, there was some information about where that number comes from. That number actually comes from a lot of research that has been done looking at what does it really cost to educate every student in Michigan fully and fairly. So Michigan needs to fund schools fairly, which means extra money for students in poverty, in special education, in isolated districts, and English language learners. With more money must come more guardrails. So establish new accountability measures to keep public money in classrooms rather than corporate bank accounts. And finally, it's time for corporations and wealthy Michiganders to pay their fair share to generate this extra revenue, rather than cutting it from other public services or community colleges. So there's a few points in this ask that we're going to make to legislators, and I'm going to break them down a little bit. So in addition to the research on the $3 billion, which is in the email that you got from us, there's this other bit about extra money for students, different kinds of students, students in poverty, students in special education, students in isolated districts. And the term for that idea is called weighted student funding, or a weighted student funding formula. And essentially it's saying, hey, if students cost more, we should fund them more. That's the fair way. If somebody, already speaks English, is coming in with lots of resources, maybe we as a state should target the resources that we have to the students who need a little bit extra. And that way we all thrive together. So that's something that Michigan currently does not do. We basically fund all students the same. Even if some students already have everything they need plus some, and some students actually need a little bit more extra help, it doesn't matter. You get the same deal. So we're saying, that needs to switch. That's not a formula that makes everybody win. So the next piece is just to say that if we are going to put more money into schools, we have to be more careful with where that money goes. And of course, we've all seen, we have questions about our own schools, especially with the rise of privatization of public schools, making sure that those dollars are really being accounted for, especially as they funnel to private companies. And then this last part is really important, because what's been happening over the past 20 years or so is that Michigan has become a low tax state. And that means that our budget is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And a lot of the problems that we've seen in our schools relate directly to this shrinking of funding that comes from, the lack of taxes in our state. The thing is that the tax cuts have gone mostly to wealthy Michiganders and to corporations. And so it's time to roll some of that back and make sure that everybody across the board is paying our fair share. The worst thing that could happen is for us to say, well, let's fund schools. We want to make sure we're doing right for the kids. And let's take it from, let's say, community colleges, right? Nobody wants to fund K-12 schools by stealing from community colleges. That's just robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? So what we're saying here is, don't take it from the other services that we need that are important to our communities. Let's make sure that everybody across the board is paying their fair share. And if we did that, we would actually be able to pay for all the things that we need. And in the email that you got, there's some more background on this fair share idea as well, for those of you who want to dig into the tax question a little bit more. So the other thing that we're going to give you when you go to lobby and have these conversations with legislators, so we're going to give you some fact sheets to hand to them and to leave with them after your meeting. So like I said, there's been a ton of research done about school funding in Michigan. There was a study that just came out a few weeks ago that show that Michigan has had a 30% drop in funding between 2002 and 2015. 30%. We are 50th out of 50 states in school funding growth since 1995. So for those of you who are, in school or back in your neighborhood thinking, why don't I have the books that I need? Why is my child in a class that consistently has a permanent sub or whose teacher is rotating out? Why are there leaks in our roof? This is why. This is what it comes from, and this is what we're going to go talk to legislators about on Tuesday. Okay, so here's the last point. What are some of the logistics? How does this actually work? So the way that we're actually going to lobby on Tuesday is going to be a few different kinds of things that we do. So we will break you into preset groups. Each group is going to have a chance to go through your agenda for the day, practice any meetings that you're going to have, get ready for what you're going to do, and then you'll be off. You'll have a team captain who's going to lead you through the whole process and will be able to answer all of your questions. There will be some scheduled meetings where you will actually be sitting down with a legislator with a pre-drafted meeting agenda that you will have rehearsed. Some of you will also be doing some drop-ins for folks who we couldn't schedule meetings with, but we still want to stop into their office and either talk to them or talk to one of their staff members. Some of you will be going to committee meetings to see how the committee meetings are running in the legislature, and some of us will be going to session, both to watch session, but also to pull some legislators out of session. Session is the big body meeting where they vote as a whole, essentially. And so we'll be pulling some legislators out of session to have conversations with them just in the lobby, essentially, outside of their meeting. So it'll all be written down into a really clear schedule for the day that we'll have for you at the bus when you show up in the morning. So one thing to remember is that everybody who goes on Tuesday is going to have a role. And one role that you can start practicing today is to think about How has funding or the lack of funding in schools affected you or your child or your communities? And what would it mean to have additional money, to have additional resources in your school? How could that benefit you? How could that benefit your student, your community, and Michigan as a whole? Because during the meetings, one of the things that we want to make sure to do is to share a very short but very clear story about how this will affect real Michiganders throughout the state. So between now and Tuesday, do some thinking about what is your story of school funding. If you have any questions between now and then, feel free to give us a call or just reply to the email that you where you got this link, and we're happy to answer any other questions you have. Okay, thanks so much, and we will see you guys Tuesday morning, bright and early at 9 a.m.